This is episode number 209 of the Plein Air Podcast, featuring artist Charles Minch.
This is the Plein Air Podcast with Eric Rhodes, publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. In the Plein Air Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called plein air, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it plein air. Others say plein air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhodes.
Well, thank you, Jim Kipping, and welcome everybody to the Plein Air Podcast. I love doing this. It's so much fun for me, and it's fun to talk about plein air painting. Any day talking about plein air painting is a good day, as far as I'm concerned. Plein Air Podcast has now been rated the number one podcast in painting for art, in the top 15, number one, according to FeedSpot 2021. So thank you for that. That's pretty cool. We were looking at the stats the other day. There's absolutely been millions of downloads, just tons of people around. I think like 190 countries or some such thing. I'm not sure how many countries, something like that. Anyway, it's pretty cool. Well, we have a big date just around the corner. We're ending the annual Plein Air Live competition on March 15th. And when I say ending for the year, why are we doing that at the beginning of the year? Well, we always start the cycle later in the year, and it goes for about a year. And we have this year, we have 19 categories. You can, if you win in any of the categories, you're entered into the national competition. And the national competition, then we do the monthly competition, March 15th, you enter. And then we're going to scramble and get it all ready, get the judges ready, get all the decisions made. And we're going to award the $15,000, the cover of Plein Air Magazine, and all the other cash prizes, $30,000 worth, at the Plein Air Live. So make sure that you get yours in. And remember, what one judge doesn't like, another judge does like. And if you have paintings, they don't have to be fresh. They just have to be good. And so put your best paintings in there. There's 20 different categories. They're not all plein air categories. There's lots of different categories. So check it out. Also, don't forget to sign up for the big event called Plein Air Live. We canceled the Plein Air Convention for this year again because of obvious reasons. But this last week, we announced some really big names. I mean, we had some really big names, but even some bigger names, including one who you're never going to get a chance to see. So it's huge. I'll just let you go to the website and figure that out. Anyway, it's going to be amazing. Since we can't gather in person, let's all, as a community of plein air painters, gather live on Plein Air Live. We had the world last time. We had 40 countries. Let's see if we can get it up to more countries this year. If you're listening in another country, join us. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you can't make the dates, or you can certainly watch the replays, or if you don't want to stay up in the middle of the night, and you can watch the replays during the day. But we'd love to have you on live. A lot of people actually sit up all night if they're in Europe or something like that. So it's kind of cool. If you want to discover plein air painting, if you're interested in it, you're curious about it, you've never done it, we have a beginner's day that goes through everything. It goes through, the equipment and how to use it, how to paint outdoors, how that differs. And then we go through each of the things like oil painting and pastel, watercolor, gouache, etc., acrylic. And that way it teaches you the pros and cons of each and how to use them. And then you can decide what's for you. Anyway, 3 days for Plein Air Live, 1 day for the beginner's day, which is optional. You don't have to sign up for anything but beginner's day, or you could sign up for Plein Air Live alone, or for both. Most people do both because there's some really great masters that won't be repeated, and they're worth seeing their principles. So that's at pleinairlive.com. I'm going to be posting some really fun stuff this month. I've got some cool things I've been working on. So let's get together on Instagram. You can follow me. My name is Eric Rhodes, Rhoads. There's no E. Anyway, in the magazine, the current issue of Plein Air Magazine, you're going to find an article by Kelly Kane on the most ambitious plein air painting of all time. What would it be? Well, only minutes at a time to capture the light at dusk. John Singer Sargent wrangled child models together in a supersized canvas to complete Carnation Lily Lily Rose over the course of several months, and he did it all outdoors. So you want to find out the story on that. And if you're not a subscriber to Plein Air Magazine, shame, 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 shame. Okay, a reminder to sign up for Plein Air Today, our free newsletter at outdoorpainter.com. It's weekly inspiration, tips, and more. Just go to Plein Air Today or outdoorpainter.com, hit the newsletter. Coming up after the interview, I'm going to be answering your art marketing questions in the Marketing Minute. But first, let's get right to this interview with Charles Minch. He's very talented, a great plein air painter. I met him years ago. He lives kind of in the high Sierras, the High Plains Desert area, and boy, I'll tell you, he is a rock star painter. Here we go. Charles Minch, welcome to the Plein Air podcast.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. It's going to be fun.
Well, it's really going to be fun because we can reminisce a little bit. I was thinking about, I think the first time we ever met had to have been, gosh, it was a long time ago because Plein Air Magazine didn't exist yet. And we were, I think I met you up at Sonora Plein Air. The gallery owner of the Vault Gallery, I think, had something to do with putting that on. I think you were in that. Yeah. And I was kind of out promoting the idea of this new magazine and getting to know the lay of the land. And I think that's when we first met.
Yeah, I think so. God, it was a long time ago painting. Yeah, that was fun.
Well, you were
memories.
a good painter then, but you're a great painter now. And
thanks.
It's amazing to see the impact of time and practice and learning. And just when I was kind of doing my homework for this and trying to decide who we were going to put on the podcast next, and I looked at your work, I just was blown away at how sophisticated it has become. And it is, like I said, you were a good painter before, but it's amazing how much you've changed.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I do think it's live and die with every canvas, live and die with every brush stroke. When I told when I teach a workshop, some of my students, when you put a wrong brush stroke down, it should physically hurt, right? You should go, ah! I mean, that's the way it is. And, if you're not in a fetal position when you do a bad painting, well, I don't know. I mean, I do believe in always trying to get better with each painting. And that's a journey I've been on.
Well, I'd like to hear your journey. How did this all begin for you? I decided I want to be a professional artist at 15. Really?
I mean, I was always drew in class, and then I won Save the Cable Cars competition. They were going to remove the cable cars from San Francisco. We did posters, and I took second place, and it was a cash award and $1,500. Well, that was, back in 1982. That was like, well, that was something. And,
quite frankly, even for a student, that's a lot today.
Yeah, and I just at the time thought, it was sort of just, wait a minute, this is what I like to do. Is there any way I can make a living at this? And because maybe I'm pig-headed or stubborn, I never went illustration route. I fine art or bust, which of course involved a lot of bartending, a lot of waitering. I've done other tasks before. I think 1994 was the last time I held a job, as I'd call it. But
and what did you do for a job?
Bartended and waitered. Just
like actors.
Yeah. Yeah, I had no real fall. I remember 1996. It was the middle of the first .com boom. Everybody in the Bay Area, because that's where I was in San Jose, California, was making just bank off of stupid ideas that would later collapse. I couldn't afford an apartment in the studio, so I wound up living in my studio in an old warehouse in San Jose.
Well, I was out there at that time. That's why I went out there. I started a tech company. And
Okay.
and I remember how crazy those days were. I mean, we took over an apartment building, a small one that had like 5 apartments, and the rent was astronomical. And, so tech companies like ours were taking those things over, and people didn't have anywhere to live because everybody could get so much money out of things at the time.
Yeah, it was strange. It was a cool warehouse. And again, I always feel, I'm paraphrasing the Joseph Campbell quote, but if you follow your bliss, in the end, you'll find the path you're on is the one you're meant to be on. So I don't look back with regret or, I was living in a warehouse. I can give it a nice varnish of nostalgia now and say, hey, I paid my dues. It was interesting times. And then I went and lived in Spain for a while and did many things that, hey, whatever. If I were calculating this is how I'm going to make a career as a successful artist, well, maybe I wouldn't have gone to live in Spain. But it was fun. No regrets.
So you went to Spain as an artist.
Yeah, again, this is pre 9/11. So I went to Spain for a couple of months just to travel. Wound up meeting various roommates, and we all got a place in North Madrid. And I stayed there. No visa, no nothing.
Your parents were probably mortified.
They didn't care. I mean, actually, I do remember I had some paint. My mom actually doing them at a gallery here called the Bingham Gallery back, and they sold a few paintings. I would actually get a check now and then, which was nice. And it was fun. It was a good experience, and again, this is where I am now. And in 2001, decided, or really 2000, that I just can't be in the Bay Area. And that's when I moved to Markleeville, California, population 200. But I was surrounded by beautiful scenery, and that's kind of where everything turned around.
And has that population grown since then?
I think it's 205 now. I'm like Garrison Keeler on Lake Wobegon. I come back a few times a year and see what the local gossip is and what's going on. And it was fun. It was just a fun place to live and inspiring. I mean, just step out and paint. And now I'm about 25 miles east as the crow flies in rural Nevada. Nice.
What a beautiful area. Yeah. You've got such inspiration around there, so much to paint.
Yeah, I just my little marketing newsletter went out today, and all the paintings that I put in were within. Well, one was 20 yards from my studio, and painting a bird and an apple tree with snow that I haven't finished yet, but I wanted to post it anyways. And others, one was I was at my waiting for a dentist appointment. I go, look at that light. I just get so many ideas just walking out the door.
Well, that's what it's all about. It's that inspiration. So when did the first plein air painting happen for you?
I was thinking back on that. I got to dig through. I have pictures. The embarrassingly short shorts we all wore in the late 80s. I have pictures of me wearing those embarrassingly short shorts, painting with my French easel, because my instructor in college at San Jose State, Maynard Dixon Stewart, he said, you got to get out and paint from life. And so I got a French easel and got out there and did it. It's sort of been interwoven in my education and career from the beginning.
You're lucky, actually, because, many artists will paint in the studio for 30 years before they go out, and then all of a sudden the light goes off and they realize how much they were missing.
Yeah, I remember, so my instructor, he would say, hey, this weekend, let's go out painting. Okay. I remember the lessons I'd get just painting alongside him. He wasn't teaching. It was a Saturday. I remember we're doing these grove of trees of eucalyptus that are ubiquitous in the Bay Area. And he gets his mask in. I'm struggling away working. I look over. He's under a tree eating a sandwich. And I'm just panicking, trying to get something. I go, are you done? He said, no, I've masked in the forms. I've masked in the general light. The light's going to change. So I'm going to enjoy my sandwich now, and I will finish it later. We are not painting the object. We are painting the effect of light upon the object. One of his many quotes.
Oh, well, that was pretty important lesson, though, when you think about it.
Yeah, I still remember. By the time I was done scrambling, I went to my lunch, and ants had gotten in it. Okay, nature. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, nature.
You made your point. Yeah. Well done.
So this person was a pretty significant influence on your work.
Yeah, I still try to visit. We haven't this year with the COVID, but at least once a year, try to get together a couple other artists. He's 94, I think, now.
And still going out painting?
No, he's just enjoying conversations and hanging out with fellow students. And trouble with 94, you don't have a lot of peers.
Yeah, well, you have to. My grandmother told me when she was about that age, she said, I'm glad I made a lot of younger friends because all my older friends are gone.
Yeah. He's it's always fun to bring work into and have him critique it. And he'll still dig in pretty good too.
Oh, that's wonderful. So I'd love to. I like to get into what did we learn from our mentors? Could you point out a few things that maybe stick out in your head that you learned from him?
God, there's so many. It's I hate to be self-deprecating, but who cares? So I got a scholarship to UCSB through the College of Creative Studies out of high school, and that art department, hopefully it's better now, but it was terrible. Sorry, any gauchos out there. So I was there, and somebody said, "Oh, you should go to San Jose State. There's an old academician there. He's a curmudgeon. You'd like him." I don't want to go back to San Jose. I just left. But I did on that recommendation. I didn't know what I wanted in art, but I knew what I didn't. And I knew, like at San Jose State, with the music building right across, you'd hear the musicians playing scales. And I'm thinking, wait a second. If that's good for musicians, why is art all about how do you feel? Let's do whatever you want, and we'll talk about how you feel about it later. I just didn't like that. So the first day of figure drawing in Mr. Stewart's class, I'm cocky. I stand back and show him my drawing because he has everybody do 20 minutes of drawing to assess the class. I said, "What do you think?" He says, "I think you're a sophomore in college and don't know beans about drawing." And that's when I went, "Oh my God, that's instruction." But he wasn't cruel. He then showed me, "You've missed the action. Look at the movement on this figure," and bam, bam. And that's when I said, "Okay, I'm not in college for a degree. I'm here to learn from this." And every class he taught, I was there, whether I got credit or not. I asked him, I said, "Do you mind if I'll be in the background here. I won't take the best spot, but I'm going to be drawing in your Tuesday, Thursday class and Monday, Wednesday, Friday class." And so that led to us going painting on weekends. And
when you think about it, your attitude really made a huge difference in your development. You just listening to that story because, first off, you realized that the people across the way were doing scales and art people were not. And you realized that you had to learn, you had things to learn. So you put your ego aside, I assume, and you just said, I'm here to learn. I'm not here to get complimented.
Yeah, exactly. That's what our parents are for, if you want compliments. It's funny. So my stepdaughter, she wants to be an artist now. I don't know where she got the idea, but she'll go, "What do you think?" And she'll say, "Now you got to give me criticism. I don't want you to just tell me it looks nice." So I do always try to find a point of criticism. But that's how you learn.
We all need that. And, I get calls. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, somebody called. They said, "Listen, I want to get into an art gallery, but I don't know if I'm ready. And, would you give me some feedback?" And that's important. We have to have that because, like you said, our parents are always going to compliment us no matter what we do. But I think that's a really a great tool I think everybody can put to use. What else did you learn from some of these mentors?
God, a lot. League of New York. After Mr. Stewart retired, I said, "What should I do?" He said, "Go to New York. Go to the art students." and my folks did make me stay in college for one more semester to get my degree, which, okay, fine, I got a degree. But yeah, I went to New York and so many lessons. I took classes with everybody. I remember one lesson in particular, David LaFell. I was in his figure and still life class. It was a combination. He had 40, 50 students in there. It was, in the famous, was it Studio 7B or 5B, but beautiful North Light. And, he'd be there only a couple days a week. The assistants were there the rest. And he doesn't get to everybody every time. But I did notice he would go to various people and say, oh, that's lovely. Next person, oh, that's beautiful. Next person, oh, I'm juicing my own carrots. But when he would get to me, he'd actually go, no, that's wrong. Right now it looks ugly. The painting should be beautiful at every stage. And I go, I'm just starting. And that lesson has stuck with me. I understand. So I'd write down all his comments in it back in my little place at the West Side Y on 57th Street. I'd write it all down more legibly, and I just like, that's true. I mean, when I started painting, I put washes, very abstract colors, tones, but it does look nice. When you started painting, and I've watched demos from artists and stuff, or paint. It usually looks beautiful in some very simple way from the very beginning. If you start off washing muddy color onto your panel, God, it did right over. You should start cringing a bit. That was one of the. I took Jack Ferragasto's class that taught the Riley method at night. Very strict. Took a day to mix the palette, and then use oil of clove to keep it wet throughout the week.
That's my background as well. I didn't study with Jack. I still keep up with Jack on social media, but and he's living in a nursing home somewhere. But he was amazing. I almost published his book. I decided for whatever reason it wasn't right for me to do it. But he has a new book out fairly recently. Which is this is a guy who just knows so much, and he studied under Riley. So.
Yeah.
So the Riley method, that's huge that you learned that.
Yeah, and it really did teach, the discipline. I think it's why I still use so many brushes, because if you have your, for any people not familiar with the Riley method, you have a row that goes from white being 10 to black, which is 0. You have a row of flesh tones that start at 1 to 9, and then or yellows, reds, oranges, and then a couple of greens on the side. And that you do not mix from 2 to 4. You go 2 to 3 to make it 2.5, 2 3/4. And when he talks, he'd say, look at the tone, the middle tone on the flesh in the light with this model is a 7.5, and you really have it at an 8.5. 8, that's specific. And I know it was funny because that everybody has huge egos who taught there. So in LaFell's class, you'd hear him say, I can't believe there's people who actually teach and talk about numbers. Where's the art in that? They jab each other.
Well, I think
I learned from everybody. I just kept my mind open.
Well, everybody's got their process. But the nice thing about Riley, and I went through that same thing, and I used to say to my instructor, I said, do I have to mix this? It would take me 3 hours or 4 hours to mix that palette up. And, if things dried out, that's why we put clove oil in it. But, and we try to keep it dry or keep it, sealed so that we didn't have to remix it. But he said, look, there's going to come a time when you're not going to need to do it this way. He said, but this is the language. He said, I can tell you that, that like you said, I can tell you your value is a 5 and it really should be a 6 or a 6.5. And so it's a great tool for learning.
Who was your instructor?
Well, mine was a guy.
That sounds exactly.
Mine was a guy by the name of Jack Jackson, who studied directly under just my brain just went Riley, and and so I have a Riley palette right here next to me in my studio, and I refer to it all the time.
Yeah, and that's because that's exactly what Ferragosto said. He said, you don't have to do this all the time, but if you ever find yourself in a rut and just really stuck, you can fall back on this. It's good structure. Again, he would say value, and I listened to your interview with Ned Mueller, who said the same thing, that value is the important one. I mean, the interview with Ned, he said value does all the work and color gets all the credit. And but then LaFell in the morning would say, no, it's all important. Everything's 100%. If your color's wrong, people will say you've got bad color. So I just took it all in, and I just sort of processed it all. And I think if I ever had to give recommendations to a student, just if the instructor tells you to put one foot in the air, chew bubble gum, and sing Tom Waits songs to paint, do it. While you're in their class, do exactly what they tell you, and then on your own, process it and decide whether that is for you or not. But I've taken workshops in the past where I've seen artists who were, they were professionals taking a workshop, and they fought with the instructor all week long. And I watched as the instructor just kind of withers and says, you could tell he doesn't even want to, remember, I won't say who, but he was going, can you just try it my way for the week? Well, so that would be some advice I give. Whatever the instructor says, if you're taking a class, do it.
Well, I think what happens, is that, excuse me, what happens is that there are people who go to workshops just because they want to be around other people to paint. And so I always say to those people, look, go to a retreat, like this retreat I do in the Adirondacks, and just go paint with other people. But if you're going to a workshop, listen. And I hear this all the time from workshop instructors. There's always one who just does what they want to do, and they don't pay attention and they don't try anything. They're not there really to learn. They're just there to kind of be there. And I you can't fault them for that, but that's, you got to go through some pain. You got to struggle with some things.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I don't know if these people notice who insist on, I guess, showing off during the week or whatnot, but they don't get as much attention because it's almost like, I think the instructor generally would just go, okay, maybe I don't need to go for and battle this again today. And anyways, not that I would ever do that. But
No, of course not. Of course not. No. And talk to me about teaching. You do much?
No, I don't. I'm doing a Sierra spring workshop once a year up here in Hope Valley, but that's it really. I've in the 90s when I was in the Bay Area and had my atelier, my warehouse, house/studio, I did do quite a bit of teaching then, and I enjoy teaching. But I don't want it to be a big part of my career.
Well, and I think what happens, first off, every artist goes through that. A lot of artists teach only because they need the income. But there's got to be a period of time in every artist's life when they just say, you know what, I'm going to have to stop this for a while because they've got to just concentrate on, doing their masterworks.
Yeah, it's again, I feel, boy, the more time I can be behind this easel here, that sort of affects a lot of my thinking and yeah, it's just plenty of darn good teachers out there. Do we need another? Not right now.
Well, there is a little bit of redundancy, but what I've learned from being on this live Facebook, YouTube program every day for the past 8, 10 months, 11 months is that there's every single artist does one thing different from everybody else that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
What I think would be kind of fun, and I think people value this when listening to the podcast, is they would like to take away a few lessons on painting. And you've got different people at different levels, so you have everything from beginners to experienced pros who've been doing it for their whole life. Are you Are you willing to kind of throw some ideas out there, some things that you've discovered that have worked really well for you?
Yeah. One, when you're field painting and outdoor painting, don't throw the painting away right away. Don't get frustrated. You know that feeling? You just, oh, God, it just hurts to look at. And I believe when you're painting outdoors, the first thing is, I believe more in listening when you're outdoors and not talking. Meaning I don't come in with a preset color scheme or I really, within 2 minutes of beginning a painting, I want the canvas covered. And I start, let's say I'm painting a Sierra Lake. I'll put a light, very transparent wash of the yellows, then blue grays were the mountains, and then maybe a little darker blue or something to cover. But there's no form to it. It's just colored. Canvas is now covered. So if LaFell would walk by, he'd say, "Hey, that looks beautiful." And then I'll do drawing and brush and work from there, establish my lights and darks. But in the beginning, I'm listening. Again, I don't pre-tone the panel because I don't know what nature's going to tell me that day. And I feel that at some point, you're listening to nature, you're reacting, you're interpreting. And at some point, if the painting goes well, a little heartbeat, the painting starts, oh, it has life. And then, you're moving, you're not copying what's in front of you, you're moving things around and enhancing. And suddenly you go, oh, this is going to, and suddenly the painting lives on its own. It's separate from nature. It's its own entity. That's when it goes well. But other times, you just whatever. The clouds come in, the bugs get too thick, and it's just, But keep those paintings. I have stacks of them. This will sound morbid, but I call them organ donors. There's a part of that painting that will help another painting live. And I was showing a collector who was here. All these, I rarely would do that, but just stacks of unfinished, flawed paintings. But those paintings have some piece of truth in them that I can use here in the studio to help me with other paintings.
Well, I watch on social media, I watch people have a burning party or something where they burn all their old paintings. And I kind of feel the same way as you. There's something valuable. I have stacks and stacks, and I look at them about every 2 years. I just go through every single one, and you see them through different eyes for the first time. After putting them away for a while. I hadn't really thought about valuable lessons in them, but I just hate to. I like to be able to look back because sometimes you don't feel like you're making any progress, and then when you look back, you look at something you did even a year ago, and you go, "Wow, how much I've changed," and that gives you encouragement. Or you might go, "Wow, I didn't realize I was able to do that back then." So it could go both directions.
Yeah, and the learning process is not an arc. It does not start from point A and go up to point B. It is a sine wave that goes up and down and up. The general movement, you hope, is upward. But maybe you're suddenly, instructor says, "Hey, I want you to try this thing." And the process of trying to do that, you forget your composition drops a bit. So you think, as you absorb more, I know the feeling from when I was a student, how you go, good God, this is worse than I did a week ago. The hell? But it's part of the process. I know as long as you live and die with each painting. When I was at the Art Students League, there were people who were studying with Frank Mason. You familiar with him? He was a student of Dumond.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, and they were called Masonites because they studied with Frank, and he had a very stylistic, almost a Rubenesque quality to his figurative work. But those students, it seemed they had it in their head that I paint here for 6 years, and when I come out the other end, I'm ready for the art world. I think that's a flawed. I don't think it is just putting in the time.
Well, you and I both know that we've met artists who have put in a lot of time who are not there. They're not. Yeah, they're not cooked. And there tends to be a badge of courage for being self-taught, and I'm not being critical of that, but we need other input.
Yeah, my response whenever I hear that, I'm self-taught. Like, one, no, you're not, unless you've never seen a painting. And two, in any other profession, would I go in and say, I need my spleen removed? Well, I'm self-taught. Come to my garage. I mean, what other profession is that? I never drove my car. Well, I'm self-taught. Let me see what I can do. Give me a hammer. I mean, you kind of want, most things, we like expertise.
I think that's a great observation.
I think it's and again, this is, I don't know why this quote comes back to me, but I think it was LaFell who said, hey, it's just like getting old doesn't guarantee wisdom. Painting doesn't guarantee that you'll get better if you don't struggle at it. I took Saturday classes with Michael Aviano. Does his name ring a bell?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and in his atelier in his Upper West Side apartment with other students, and some who've gone on to have really good careers. But I remember
Graydon Parrish was one of his students.
Yeah. And I was doing cast painting, and I was just exhausted. It's a long week because classes in the morning, class at night, Saturday. And I remember he walked up to me and goes, Charles, why don't you just put the brush down? Go over to Ray's, have a slice, come back. Satisfy the animal in you so later your spirit can soar. Just a great line. In that, if you're just trying to get the mileage, it isn't going to make a difference unless you're really studying with each one. And again, living and dying with each brushstroke. And you can climb the mountain a lot faster if you really focus on the trail and not just wander around aimlessly. If I wander around, eventually I'll get to the top. I mean, I think with focus, you can get farther. Well,
especially if you have a goal in mind.
Yeah, that's it too. I mean, go ahead.
Well, I mean, sometimes I'll start a painting. I'll say, I really need to learn how to nail that tree. And everything else is nice, but I really want to nail that pine tree. I want to really get the essence and the feel of that tree. So I'll put a goal in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I think observation is, don't put the trees that you learned in one workshop into, please don't turn the high Sierra white bark pines into fir trees in the Northwest, please. I see that when people paint formulas. They're painting what they think is a tree, but not what's in front of them. And trees have such character. I'm working on a painting now, and I'm designing it, moving trees around. But I go, oh, that has character. I want that tree expressed. And I've done portraits of trees in the Sierra just because they're so unique.
Absolutely. Well, and somebody will say, well, what's the color of, a pine tree?
Yeah.
Well, it's different in every single place. So, okay, let's go. Oh, you go. I don't want to interrupt.
No, I was going to say one thing. In the work, it's always hard. How do you get that color? Oh, that always is a stick in the spokes of my wheel, because that is hard to break that down. When you're painting.
Yeah.
Warm. Yeah. I think a lot of that just comes through mileage too. Thoughtful mileage is.
People meanwhile, on this daily show, the common questions are, how do you get that? What colors did you use to mix that? And quite frankly, there's nothing wrong with that question, because you kind of want to know where they started. You and I both know that we're both taking a little dab of this and that until we get it, till it feels right.
Yeah.
But you also want to kind of know the starting point. And if somebody's a novice, that's an important question to them. They want to know the questions they're asking are like, what kind of brushes and what kind of panels and what kind of this and that, and that I always equate that to, I'm going to become a better golfer if I buy a Tiger Woods brand of golf clubs. You want what the pros are using, but obviously you got to go out there and hit a lot of golf balls no matter what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of some other things that you might be able to impart in terms of painting wisdom or painting ideas. Let's kind of talk about painting the area that you paint. You paint in the, what would you call that, the Northern Sierras?
No, well, what is it? I guess you can call it. Yeah, I call it the Northern Sierra, the High Plains Desert and the Great Basin region of Nevada, California, and North and Central Sierra.
All right. By the way, one of my goals in life is to do a mule trip up to some of the points where Edgar Payne painted. I guess I need to get that done before I get to a point where I can't do it. But when you're out there, so you're starting out by kind of laying in some kind of a base color for your water and a base color for your sky and a base color for your mountains. What's your process like from that point forward?
Very light drawing with a brush, and then it sounds like this, the basic stuff: establishing your lightest light, your darkest dark, establishing the big patterns, working up and down, locking in the light. Don't follow it. I remember, somebody doing a decent enough painting in the morning, come back an hour or two later, and they've changed. I go, well, what are you doing? Well, this is the way it is. And I said, why don't you paint it black? Because it'll be dark soon. Lock in the light. And then for me, I do there was a period of time where I was just, hey, let me get some color, especially on the Sierra Pack trips. Let me get the shape, feel of this. Let me move over to this area and do 5-6 paintings a day, but nothing's finished. Hey, I love it when I could finish one out in the field. And it doesn't always happen, but I do. I just will settle in and go, I'm only going to get 1, maybe 2 paintings done today, but I'm going to try to finish the suckers.
Well,
for me, it's just fun.
Let's talk about chasing light, because I just interviewed a guy that said the exact opposite of what you said. And his attitude was, I'm there painting, the light's constantly changing, and all of a sudden the light hits a tree in a particular way that, it's completely different than what I had planned, but I will lay it in because it works for me. Will you lock in and not do that, or will you try to remember that for another moment? What would your process be?
I think he and I are saying the same thing, only different. When I say locking in, I mean you're painting a tree that's backlit, so just the edges are catching the light, and then when the sun moves, you then take all that shadow and turn it into front light or side light. That's what I mean locking. I don't mean locking in over a split second like a camera. A good plein air painting, I think, is a distillation of time. That's what makes it so cool. It's 2 to 3 hours of time condensed. Now, you're locking in the light so it doesn't get away from you. So you're not, again, telling a lie and or just changing it for no reason. But yeah, if a cloud moves in and you go, I want that cloud shape, you are, again, this conversation with nature thing. You're having a conversation with nature over a period of time, and nature might suggest throws a cloud over and it puts the foreground in shadow. You go, okay, that I might add that, or like the artist you talked to, a certain highlight on a tree. But the structure of the light has to be true to that time period, meaning that, especially if you're doing tricky morning light, you got to lock that. You got to generally lock that thing in pretty early.
Yeah. So do you tend to get up for the sun?
If I'm on if I'm on a trip, yeah. I mean, especially the pack trips, I'm definitely if I've never been to a place, like I don't paint the first day. I just like to walk, once you get off the mules and get set up, I like to walk around and get a feel. But once I start to lock in and go, okay, I like the way that mountain looks at that light. Yeah, I like it. Especially it's fun to get a sunrise. Mid-morning, afternoon. Usually, I can possibly do 2.5 or two paintings and a little 6x. That's pretty ambitious for me now. Because I do like to spend time on the painting.
What size are you painting on location?
Back in the day when I first did Laguna, and I was painting quite a bit larger, 24, 30, 18, stuff like that. But I'm comfortable. I like my little 9 by 12, 12, 16, wonderful little 6 by 8s. I know what I'm out there for now too. Not out there to show off for a plein air show. I'm out there to learn, listen to nature, come back with something that really inspires me and something that I have to say about where I was that I think other people might resonate with. You know, it's not just about getting all these paintings done. Look at this is the mountain. I painted it.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk, because you made a statement which I think is worth probing. I'm not out there to show off for a plein air show. What are your thoughts about all of this?
I did those shows. I laid down my palette knife and palette in 2007. Ambivalent, and I've heard other artists talk the same way. Was it a learning experience? Yes, because you have to perform. You have to get a finished painting in the field, and some of them came out good. Some of them didn't. But the show, I don't know. They were fun. The camaraderie was always fun, but there got to be especially a feeling like, you know, you parachute into this place that you've never been before. You go, okay, what do I got to find? What do I got to say? What's going to paint that'll sell? What can I do? What can I do? I remember Telluride specifically. They say, look, if you go 2 miles this way or that way, people aren't going to buy your work.
Really?
Yeah, they're just not. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that show's still going, but they were really, hey, if you paint the bank, it'll sell. Okay. And and again, I'll say it's just because I remember joking. I think probably the last time I did a show, I'm packing my supplies, and the artist said, "You got everything?" Yeah, I got everything except my lipstick and rouge. I start to feel like I'm becoming a whore doing this. And,
sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what I was going to say that, but that is the trouble. I remember it was Telluride where I did a little alley painting, and very pleased with it. The person came up and said, "Oh, I know exactly where that is. That's C Street or something." And I go, actually it's B Street. And they walked away. I said, "What?" "Well, that's not the street I have a property on." And again, was it a learning experience? Yes.
Well,
when I did it, was it profitable? Yes. And I always, in 2000, I said, okay, that's enough.
I learned to keep my mouth shut on situations like that because, I've done shows where people will walk up and I go, I know exactly where that is. And they'll say, well, where is it? And they'll say, I don't say, no, that's wrong. I just let them, enjoy it. And I remember a show where 3 different people, I sold the same painting 3 times, meaning that somebody bought it, but they went to get their money out of their car or something. So I quickly did a quick copy of it, because I liked it. I wanted to remember it. And then somebody came up and bought that one while I was painting that one. And then I did a third one. And they were all a little different because I didn't want them to be the exact same thing. But each one said, oh, I know exactly where that is. And I think that's one of the magics of painting is that if you hit the right nerve, some of these places could be anywhere in the world and remind someone of a memory. So if you tell them exactly where it is, if they ask, you should, but if you tell them exactly where it is, they might not. It kind of blows the fantasy.
Yeah. And that's something, over time, especially if anyone's doing those shows, I wouldn't recommend getting specific.
Yeah.
That looks like Tahiti. Well, yes, it is.
Well, I won't lie to anybody. I won't tell them, yes, it is. But
yeah.
So I think, it's curious, this thought about the shows. I personally think they're wonderful, and I think it's a great experience for artists to go through, and it's a great career development opportunity. And, and those of us who paint, we tend to get stuck in our own little world. We paint alone, we paint in the studio, we maybe paint with a buddy, but we don't get a lot of interaction with the collectors. And I think that's a really great benefit of these shows, is a chance to talk to people and get to know them and see how they respond and what they like. And, but I can also see you get to a point where it's like, I don't want to perform. That's too much pressure.
Yeah, and I remember at a show, and I don't want to sound too negative because, like you said, the camaraderie, a lot of 4th of July in Telluride, where could be better? That was fun. But it is just, it is because I take my career so seriously. I have a sense of humor, but boy, not when it comes to art. I don't know why. Suddenly I become very serious. And I remember talking to an artist saying, boy, these shows, and I know this is good, but I just hate the idea that we got to paint just what people want to buy. And this artist came from an illustration background. He just looked up and said, well, isn't that what we do? Actually, no, that isn't what we do. I mean, hopefully you're painting your passion. I mean, mine is the mountains, the Sierra. That's why I moved to middle of nowhere in 2001 and been living here since, because this is where my passion is. And
yeah,
if you're an urban painter, you want to be in the urban setting. You want to be where your passion is. There's such a variety of that one thing I feel is living in this country, that you can do whatever you want and follow your passion. There probably is a market for it out there.
Well, if somebody's following their passion and they're painting what happens to be something that's going to sell, that's great. And that becomes a big debate too, is if, and I get to ask this question all the time, do I paint what sells or do I paint what I love? And the answer is paint what you love. But if you have to go get a job doing some waiting tables again, versus painting something that somebody loves, you're probably at least getting some hand-eye coordination and some value out of that painting and some lessons out of it. And so there's a fine line, and everybody's got to make a living.
I agree with you on that exactly. And I do pay the mortgage on this house through my painting sales. This is how I make a living. And yeah, I do believe that I'd rather be painting than not painting. And, but I'm working on a 40 by 50 commission right now. And I just wrapped up a 44 by 60 commission. But the good thing is, because I've been so focused on these commissions, the one was, hey, I love your Sierra work, and let's talk about a Sierra painting. And this one is this 4050. Friend, a collector, he's hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. He said, I love paintings of these places I've been. I've done, it's a very free way to do it, but it is a commission painting. But it happens because my passion is the Sierra. When people want me to paint something and pay directly for that painting, what happens to be the stuff I love. But having said that, I remember being at some events and people were talking about that kind of that high platitudes of what they want to paint. But I remember thinking of a Maynard Dixon billboard for Savage Tires, and God, that's Maynard Dixon in the Depression doing what he has to make a living.
Yeah.
So I always think that in the back of my mind, I'll think, okay, is this I don't want to be painting Savage Tires, but that's it. And so not to sound too high and mighty, but think whatever an artist today has to deal with, think about how the Payne and Dixon and how they were doing it during the Depression.
Well, Edgar Payne was painting backdrops at theaters.
Yeah, exactly. So in the end, I will say, paint your passion, paint what you're passionate about, and find a market for what you're passionate about. At the same time, if you make a living at this and you got to take a gig, take that damn gig.
Yeah. Do what it takes.
Because if you're a working artist whose income is derived from the sale of paintings, you might not always be painting what you want, but hopefully you're not always chasing what people want.
Right. Well, and I think to some extent, if you have to make a living painting what people want, then you can take some extra time and paint what you want. And then eventually what will happen is people will want what you want. And that's, people who get to that point in their career, kind of where you are, is, you paint what you love. It comes across. People are going to buy it because they can tell. You can sometimes tell if somebody isn't really into what they're trying to paint.
Yeah, and I think it was Richard Schmidt who said there are two approaches to this. You can paint for a market, or you can paint for yourself and build a market around that. So I think that's all. Yeah,
it's all good stuff. Well, Charles, that's probably a really good place to pull the plug on this and to end. It's been a real pleasure to have you on, and I just love your painting, and I encourage everybody to go to your website and check it out. Where would they find that?
myname.com, charlesminch.com.
Now, it's not spelled the way it sounds.
It is not. M-U-E-N-C-H.
M-U-E-N-C-H, charlesminch.com.
There was a sale on vowels when I got my last name.
Let's see.
And Instagram and Facebook.
All right, terrific. Well, thank you, Charles.
Hey, well, thanks. Thanks for your time. Thanks for calling.
Well, thanks again to Charles Minch. Charles is a terrific interview, a lot of fun, and kind of fun to be around, and a great painter. Congratulations, Charles, on your success. So, are you guys ready for some marketing ideas?
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhodes, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art, Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
Thank you. In the Marketing Minute, I answer your art marketing questions. You can email yours to me, eric@artmarketing.com. I need a jingle, artmarketing.com. Oof. What a great way to drive listeners away. Okay, here is a question from Kevin Palmieri in Dover, Delaware, who asks, what are your top don'ts for selling art? Well, Kevin, I don't like to thrive on negatives. I never really thought about that, but let me see if I could come up with a couple. I think a lot of us suffer from what's called imposter syndrome. So don't get imposter syndrome. That imposter syndrome is when you don't feel worthy. I went through that my first time at a gallery. I was in this gallery in Santa Fe, and the first time I was there, I was like, why are they putting me in the gallery? I mean, I don't really deserve this. I took my paintings. I was really nervous. We hung them up, and I just was nervous, totally nervous. I didn't feel deserving. And you got to get past that. So don't have imposter syndrome. You got to overcome these kind of things in your head. I think another thing, just a personal thing, don't paint too small. The painters back east, the plein air painters back east paint bigger than the plein air painters on the other side of the country. I don't know why it is. It probably has to do with Redfield or one of those artists, but they use these great big easels, these great big, do 30 by 40s on location, and they'll do them in about the same amount of time. And one painter back east said, I don't know how these painters make any money, because, selling all these 9 by 12 paintings, when you sell 30 by 40, for a couple hours work, you make some really big money. So I don't know. I think that's just something to consider. Don't have mindset issues. Mindset is the big killer of everything. It's not just imposter syndrome, but it's, telling yourself that you're not worth the money. And that kind of goes to pricing. Don't underprice. Artists tend to kind of be a little shy. Well, I wouldn't pay that much money for it, so why would somebody else? You got to keep yourself in perspective. Somebody who can, I have friends who could walk into an art gallery and drop $250,000, and it would hurt them about as much as if we pulled a 20 out of our wallet. And so there are people out there that think differently than you. And if they see something and it's underpriced, it has a negative impact. So let me give you an example. I was doing my art marketing boot camp at the convention one year. This guy raised his hand and he said, listen, I got a story for you. He says, I was at an art show. A woman walked in. She said, I love that painting. How much is it? And he said, it's $4,000. She said, I'll take it. She writes him a check, hands him the check for $40,000. And he said, oh, ma'am, you added one too many zeros. It's not $40,000. It's $4,000. And she said, oh, it must not be very good. And she ripped up the check. True story. You see, price is equal to value in some people's minds. If somebody is affluent, super affluent, they don't want a $4,000 painting. They want a $40,000 painting. You would think, wow, it's a great painting. I can get it for $4 instead of $40. That would be the mindset. That's not how some people think. So I'm not saying you should price your stuff. You've got to work with your gallery owner if you've got one and work with them on pricing, and they're going to tell you, here's the price I want to get, and then we're going to establish your pricing. We're going to get it higher and higher and higher over time, and listen to them. They know what they're doing typically. But other than that, I don't know what not to do. Read my book. My book will probably tell you all the things to do, and that's where we want to focus our attention, is the positives. Our next question comes from Joshua Moran in Santa Fe, New Mexico, who asked, what's best to include in my biography, and what should I leave out? Well, biography. First off, what's the purpose of a biography? You got to ask yourself that. Why have a biography? Well, the biography is to set the tone about the artist. Now, I don't ever recommend lying to anybody. Lying is not fruitful. It's going to catch up to you. But I do think what you can do is you can create a sense of brand or something that feels exotic. People who buy art oftentimes are living vicariously through people like us. You and I both know artists who do some pretty crazy things. They climb mountains, and they fly in places in helicopters, and they adventure in on mule pack trips and things like that. That stuff is what sells. And so if you're boring and you don't have any of that stuff, then just be boring. But if you have any of that stuff, I don't know if anybody really cares much about anything but your painting career. You could say, Eric is a former heart surgeon who was, did heart surgery for 30 years, but his big passion was learning to paint, and he learned to paint, and he went out plein air painting, and now he does, helicopter trips into the high Sierras and tries to capture places that no one gets to go in person. Stuff like that is what really matters. And the other thing that people want, especially galleries, is they want things that show what I call social proof. Social proof is something that says that you're good, right? So social proof might be that you won the Plein Air Salon landscape category in March of 2021. And they might want to say you were featured in a magazine article, or you were featured in a book, or you won this award or that award, a blue ribbon at this event, et cetera. List all that stuff, because that gives you credibility. It's social proof. And social proof says the reason you won it is because people want to know that they're buying somebody who's good. And because people are insecure about paintings. And even though this is not necessarily quote unquote investment, because some people think that way, most people don't, they are asking themselves, is this person any good? I'm writing a check for $4,000 or $2,000 or $500 or whatever the number is. It's all relative to different people. So just make sure that you're doing things that create social proof credibility. If you have quotes from famous people, who are collectors or famous curators or something, put those in there. Jean Stern, the former director of the Irvine Museum, says this about you, and that kind of thing can be golden. Anyway, that is what this is, the Art Marketing Minute.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhodes. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
Want to remind you guys, March 15th is the date. You got to get your plein air salon in. That's the last chance for the year. So make sure that you do that, and go to pleinairsalon.com, enter your paintings. Also, get signed up for Plein Air Live. I have a 100% money back guarantee. I give you what I would want. And, it's like, okay, how do I know I'm going to invest this money, and how do I know it's going to be worth it? Well, my rule is this, and I live up to it. My rule is, if you watch the first day and you feel like that first day hasn't been worth the entire price of what you're paying for the entire 4 days, or 3 days, 3 days or 4 days, depending on which day you come in, beginner's day or not, if you don't feel like it's worth the entire price, I'll refund your money. You'll let us know by the end of the day. We'll refund your money. And you're not going to get to watch the rest of it, but you'll have gotten your first day for free. And that's how confident I am. And very, very rarely does somebody ask for a refund. And, usually if it is, I think we had one last time, and it was somebody said, well, I thought it was something other than what it was. They were an abstract painter and they didn't understand what it was. So anyway, things like that. So it's going to be phenomenal. Just go to pleinairlive.com. If you've not seen my blog where I talk about art and life and lots of other things, check it out. It's called Sunday Coffee, and you can find it at coffeewitheric.com. Also, if you don't mind, give me a follow on Instagram. It's Eric Rhodes. All right, this is fun. Let's do it next week, okay?
This has been the Plein Air Podcast with Plein Air Magazine's Eric Rhodes. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.